All right, welcome back everybody. What we need to talk about now is how to use GitHub in a collaboration environment. So far, probably in your learning, you've done very few, or maybe none at all, projects where other people are contributing code to the project. Now, this has just been a repository that you create. You're working on master branch the entire time, and you keep coding on it and committing and pushing directly to master. But in production, when you're working on a team, that is not how it works. This master, the master branch you get from GitHub when you create a repository, typically represents the live version of your product. So it's very dangerous to keep committing and pushing directly to master, because if one of those changes are a breaking change, you've just broke the website for anyone that's using it currently, and now you get to frantically try to fix it. So we're going to learn about a flow you can use in GitHub when you're learning this brand new, working collaboratively for the first time, on how to create your own branches, make your own code on it, and only push it into the master once it's ready, once it's been tested and proven that it won't break and can be deployed. And at the end of this, we'll talk a little bit more on what this flow would probably more look like in an actual company environment. But what we'll show you here is a great way to get started, kind of get the idea of creating branches, checking out branches, merging branches, fixing merge conflicts. We'll be talking about all that conceptually here, and with some nice steps laid out for you. All right, so what do we have here? On the left, this is the image we'll be using to kind of simulate the order of what we'll have you do in this Git flow. And to orient yourself, this is the remote master. This means this is the repository you create on GitHub. This is the local master, so once you clone the repository down or connect it locally, this is your version of the master that should be reflecting the one on GitHub. And then we're going to talk about branching, what branches are used for. So this is your local branch, the one on your PC. And this is the remote branch. Once you say, okay, my local branch is ready to go up to GitHub, you can push it up. And using these 4 boxes, we'll talk about how to best avoid and best fix conflicts when they arise. So a couple terms to get down here. Let's talk first Git branch. So a Git branch is something you do to start on a new feature. So you pull down a GitHub repository that multiple people are working on. You have that here, but you don't want to code directly on master. So there's a GitHub command you can do that creates a branch, and you move to that branch and you code on that instead. The branch is an exact reflection of the master branch when you make it. So all the code is basically copied to another template that you can work on without changing the master at all. And this is great. If you do something wrong here, you can always revert back to this and start again. Or if this was working great, you can say, great, let's make sure these two are the same. We'll put up to GitHub and we'll update the live version with it. So we'll talk about the actual command when we get to it, but that's what a branch is. Now a git checkout is how you move to a branch. So I'm on master, I make a branch, that creates this here, but I'm still on master, so I need to check it out, kind of like a library book. I need to move to this one, and we'll see in the console that change reflected, so you'll always see what branch am I currently coding on. Another command we need to talk about is git merge. Merge is when we say we have 2 versions of code. For example, I have my updated branch and I have my local master that doesn't have this code, but maybe my local master has code from other developers that my branch doesn't have yet. And what I need is one cohesive piece of code to push up to GitHub and merge into the master online. So we will, once our branch is all ready to be integrated into the main product, we will run a merge command, and one of 2 things will happen. It'll go well, which is what we all hope for, or we'll get a conflict. And a conflict is when, let's say you're working on a server file and someone else in your team also works on that server file. It's likely that you've written lines of code that don't match the other person, and that may be on the exact same line, or have moved things around, and Git doesn't know which one you want to keep. So instead of just messing up your code, it leaves it there, it keeps both versions, and says there's a conflict, please resolve it. And so you'll be able to go in, see the code, see which versions there are, and keep the pieces that you need and get rid of the parts that you don't. And that's resolving a conflict. All right, so with that, we have some basic terminology of what we're going to be using. Let's get started with this. So on the right here, I'm going to write the steps of what we're doing here, simulating the images on the left. All right, so step number one. Step number one is create the Git repository. So one, create Git repository on GitHub. Now there's a couple different ways you can create a repository. You can do it on GitHub and then copy the command locally to connect your machine to it, or you can start with a git init here and then create the remote master. Either of those will work, but when we're working collaboratively, one person will start this process. Whoever's hosting the repository, one person will have this on their GitHub repository. So one, you create the Git repository on GitHub. Two, connect it or clone it locally. So that will take this remote master and make a copy of it on your local machine. So now you have GitHub and you have your own GitHub repository connected to it on your computer. I would suggest, especially when you're first starting this off, your first collaborative projects, have one person do this. So on step 3, they can set up the code base. So what are you going to use? Is this a full stack app? Are you using Express? Are you using Create React app? Have somebody set up that file structure. Be aware that empty folders don't get pushed to GitHub. So even if you set up a folder structure, if those things are empty, they won't go to GitHub. So setting up the code base could be, npm init-y, get your package JSONs going, get your git ignores going, install the dependencies you're going to need, and set up some basic structure. When that is done, that person can then push that to master. So that will be step 3. You will do a git add all, git commit -m, something like initial commit, and git push. And again, this is just one person doing this. This is the only time I'm going to say push to master, just with this flow. And this will make sure the remote master is kind of all set up for everyone to go. All right, so now step 4. This is where everyone jumps into the game. So I'm going to put a little tilde here to denote that. All right, step 4. We're going to clone the repository. So this is where everyone jumps in. You will go to GitHub, you'll go to the repository, whoever's hosting it, you'll go to their account. You'll go and click on download, clone or download, and then you'll copy the URL. Locally, in your terminal, you'll type the command git clone, and then you'll paste the command from GitHub, the URL to that repository. And for everyone that didn't do steps 1 through 3, this will create the folder and put all the code in there that was created from steps 1 through 3. So as of step 4, everybody will be right here. The remote master and the local master looks the same for everybody. At this point, we can now start branching. Never code on master. After this initial setup is done, you never want to code on your master branch. And the way that you'll see that is inside of your terminal. If you are inside of a repository, you will see a little master symbol down here. It's usually green. If you're using ZSH, you can customize the colors and all that. But you should see what Git branch you have from the initial setup we had you do. And that will let you know. So if you ever see master down there, don't code on it. What you're going to need to do instead is make a branch. So step 5, create a feature branch. When we talk about branches, we should talk about this per feature. So let's say person A is going to set up the server. They're going to make a branch called server setup. If someone's working and starting on the front end, the initial routing or something like that, they'll make a branch that reflects that. So to create a branch, the command you type in your console is git branch and then the branch name. Now don't write this the same thing exactly. Obviously, write something like server setup. This will be the name of the branch. Step 6, check out to that branch. And the command for that is git checkout the branch name. So if I did server setup, it would be server setup. And once you run command 6, you will see instead of master in your console, you'll see the name of the branch you're currently on. So 5, we create the branch, and 6, we check out to it. So I'm going to say 5 and 6 here. And now we're on our local branch. We can code. We can work on whatever feature we're working on without any worry of messing up what is happening on other people's branches, because all of us have left the master. We're coding here. All right, let's say we've worked for a little while and our feature is now ready to be integrated into the remote master. This is where things get a little interesting, and we're going to have you go kind of back and forth just for practice here. And there's a few reasons we'll have you do this, and we'll talk about that. So 7, we're going to commit and push branch to GitHub. So the commands for this is exactly what we see here. I'll just copy that down. Git add, commit, and push. However, if this is your first time pushing up a new branch, when you say git push, you'll get a message from GitHub saying there is no upstream origin. This means that while you created your local branch, GitHub has no idea about it yet. So it needs a branch created up here in order to receive what you're sending it. Fortunately, GitHub will prompt you. It says, run this command. It's git set upstream origin. It gives the branch name. Just copy the command that GitHub gives you and paste it into the console. That will create the remote branch and push it up. So here we go. Our branch is now safe and sound on GitHub. Okay. You think the last step is 8, and we can just say, great, put that into the remote master. But no. The issue with that is you're not the only one working on this code. Someone else, before you push your branch up and are ready to push it into master, someone else might have already done this process. So the branch you have is out of date with the local master and the remote master. Or at least the remote master. This has been updated. Your code doesn't have what other people have put up here. And whenever you're going to put a new branch into master, you want to make sure that branch has everyone's code plus your new code. So you're not erasing or messing anything up on the live master. So this is where we backtrack a bit. Step 8, we're going to go get the most updated master. So locally, we'll run a git checkout master. That lowercase. So that's the command, and that's step 8. Here we'll say, you know what, before we go and do everything on GitHub, let's go make sure we have the most up-to-date master. And that is 8. So 8, we go over there, and then 9, we're going to say git pull. So 9 is pull down remote master. The command for that is just git pull. And what that will do is if there is any updated code that your local master doesn't have that the remote master has, it will update your local master with everyone else's code that's been updated up here. Now you may get the console message that says master already up to date. Great, then you didn't receive any new changes. But more than likely someone else would have updated the remote and now you're receiving their code. Okay, so now your local branch is behind the local master. It has some new code, but so does the local master from other people. So we need to update your branch to include that code so your code and other people's updates are all in one bundle. So step 10, we're going to check back out to your local branch. I'm going to get rid of these now because we're running out of space. And 10, check out back to local branch. So git checkout branch name, or I'll just stick with server setup for the sake of example. Now here comes the dangerous command. We're going to say, hey, all that new stuff I just got from the remote master, merge that into my local branch. So my local branch should then have all my new code and all the new code that's sitting here. So I'm going to do a little two-way arrow here for 11. And I'm going to circle it in red because this, if anything goes wrong, we want it to happen here. So number 11, we will merge master into local branch. And we're going to say merge local master into local branch. The command for that is git merge -no-ff master. And the -no-ff, just keep the cleaner history. It's easier to follow if we need to revert back to any versions. Okay, so remember, we have to be on this branch when we run that. So I should see in my terminal server setup is my local, the branch I'm on. And I run this command, git merge -no-ff master, and that merges that into my branch. Now, one of two things will happen. Either things will go well. Yay, things went well. And we'll see a little window that has a bunch of hash symbols like this. And it'll say write a commit message. All you have to do when you see that is run the command. So if goes well, hold in shift and press ZZ. That will end the merge process and you're good to go. If it goes badly, you will see something like conflicts, merge conflicts, fix conflicts, and commit to GitHub. And again, what's a conflict? Well, a conflict is if you and somebody else wrote in the same file and GitHub doesn't know which versions you want to keep. So that is when you get to go through the process on your local branch of scrolling through your program and finding any folder or file that's painted red or purple. GitHub will paint it certain colors. And let's say this app.js file had a conflict. Well, I would come into here and I would see some highlighted sections. Maybe this would be highlighted in green, and then something that looks similar to it down here would be highlighted in blue. One would be labeled current change, the other one would be labeled incoming change. And at the very top of one of those boxes, it will say accept incoming, accept current, accept both, or accept neither. So that's your job. You can either use those commands and say, accept the current, and it will erase the incoming and just keep what was there, or vice versa. Or if you need a little bit of both, you'll have to go in and manually edit. Keep both and then edit it out yourself. And as you work through the files, hopefully you don't have too many. We're doing this process, so we shouldn't have too many conflicts if you're all sticking to different features and different files. But fix the ones that you have. Make sure the code looks like it needs to be. And that is resolving conflicts. So once those conflicts are resolved, say resolve conflicts locally. Once resolved, step 12 is, again, push branch to GitHub. So these three commands one more time. Git add, git commit, git push. So here I'll say 12, push and up. And now our remote branch has all of your code plus any of the new code from the master, and it should be able to merge a pull request into the remote master without any issues. So it's finally on step 13 that we send the pull request. So 13, create PR, stands for pull request on GitHub. So what is a pull request? A pull request is something you can submit to any repository you've tried to contribute to. You can say, hey, here's my new branch. It has all this new code that's going to improve the product, or it's adding this feature we've been working on. Please accept it into the live product. And if the pull request is accepted, the code instantly goes live into that repository. So the person that pushes up the branch is typically the person to submit the pull request. But as long as you have collaborators added to your project on GitHub, you can say, ask these people to review the code and accept this pull request, and then I'll confirm it. Or if you guys have already talked and you feel good about it, just go ahead and accept the pull request on GitHub. All right, and that updates the remote master completely with your new code. So what do you do from here? Well, from here, one last step. Locally, you'll git checkout to master and git pull. So 14, we're still here. We'll come back to our local master and pull down the new code. From there, you just start back at this process. Create a feature branch, right? So steps 15 or 5 through 14 are repeated. You create a branch, you check out to it, you code on it. Once it's ready to be put in the master, we do this whole back and forth thing. So we push the branch up so it's up on GitHub safe and sound, and then we check out to our local master. We pull down the remote code to make sure our master is up to date, and this updates it if not. Then we check out back to our branch and say, all right, merge that code into my current code. Once that either works well or we fix the conflicts, we push our branch up one more time, submit the pull request, get it put into the master, and now we're ready to start our next feature. So locally we're like, great, go back to the local master, pull it down, and start at step 5 again. Create a new branch and check out to it and keep coding. And this is I know it looks like a lot of arrows here. You just need to go through the flow a couple times, but there's a few reasons why we're doing this. One is we want the merge conflicts to happen locally, not remotely. Now, GitHub does have diffing tools that you can use on their website to fix conflicts, but I find, and I'm sure you will find, that fixing those conflicts locally in VS Code is a much more pleasing experience, way less frustrating, and a lot easier. So if anything goes wrong, we want it to happen down here, not up here. That is the main reason why we're doing this back and forth. Now, I did say that we talk a little bit more about a more production-like flow when you're working with a company. It gets a little bit more complicated than this. Now, the first 4 steps would stay the same, 5 and 6 even. We go to this branch, but this would be like a feature, a large feature. And this is what people would be branching off of. They'd clone it down, they'd all receive this branch, and then everyone would say, great, here's my branch off of that, here's my branch off of that, here's the other person's branch off of that. And then they'd be updating this feature branch. Now, once this feature was done, then they'd push it to the remote and do the pull request. And this just creates one more layer of separation between what you're working on and the master that represents the live product. But for the sake of learning, when we're working with 2 or 3 people on our first little portfolio group project pieces, this flow of just creating your own branch and doing this, pulling down code, is really great practice to get an idea of how GitHub can be used for collaborative work. All right, it will take some practice. I would suggest, regardless of how comfortable you feel with this process, pull someone aside that knows this process the first time you do it and have them answer any questions you have. It's best to get that help and spend a few extra minutes the first time than get a horrible pull request or a horrible conflict that causes breaking changes and fun hours of work of trying to fix things. So take that with a grain of salt, but follow this flow. You can use these steps. And again, if you have questions, please reach out when you're first getting to know GitHub. All right. So that is collaborative work with Git. There are other flows. You can go to YouTube. You can find other people's opinions on this. This is not the only way to do it, but it is a fine way to do it when you're first learning. And it will teach you branching, checking out, merging, and pull requests. So really good stuff. All right, when you're ready, let's move on.